And I want to start off with this because he's my quarterback now. Speaking of being excited about our quarterbacks, I would never mistake anybody for Sam Hartman. And I saw him and Marcus Freeman were making the rounds doing the car wash over at ESPN the other day. You could obviously check out the interview that we did with Sam Hartman on this podcast first weeks ago, wherever you get your podcasts and the DraftKings YouTube channel. But Fitz, did you see the story about Sam Hartman's rib that he had removed?
Yeah. So, yes. And by the way, not just because we're on this show together, I should tell you this. I was lucky enough to cover college football, for the last 6 years for ESPN. Every Saturday, I sat in a huge conference room, watched every game. I have seen, I think, probably 80% of the snaps that Sam Hartman has taken. And I actually emailed, because Mel Kiper Jr. is not a texter. I emailed Mel Kiper Jr. last year on a Saturday, and I was like, somebody tell me why we're not talking about Hartman, like just in general, because you talk about ball placement, you talk about being able to read, you talk about getting the ball out quickly. Like, he does everything incredibly well in my mind. And, Mel gave me the usual, well, size and all of these concerns. I think Sam Hartman has the chance this year to blow up at Notre Dame in every possible way. But if I was already rooting for that because of the player, I'm rooting for that now because of the rib removal. And not just because you had a rib removed, which sounds incredibly painful and is a reminder I'm not a doctor. I have no idea how to do it. But the fact that he then gives the rib to his mom and says, keep this because he wants to turn it into jewelry. I need this man to get drafted so that he can walk across the stage in a Patrick Mahomes, like, perfectly fitted suit with no shirt on underneath. And the only thing you see on the chest, because in my mind, it's a perfectly waxed chest. And on that perfectly waxed chest sits this piece of beautiful jewelry that is his rib. I need this.
I honestly, I'm glad you're manifesting this vision because you're right. It's the perfect future for Sam Hartman because it also assumes that everything goes great this year, like you said, at Notre Dame, and he's a huge success and he gets to be a gigantic, awesome draft pick. But yeah, he wants to turn his own rib into a shark-tooth necklace. So anyone that doesn't remember, at the start of last season, Sam Hartman was dealing with some health issues that actually had him miss time during the preseason and miss one game in the regular season there. He needed surgery after he was diagnosed with Paget-Schroeder syndrome, which gave him some issues with blood clotting, and he had to have a rib that was up near his collarbone, as the light just goes out in the back of my thing here. So now you get me on darkness on YouTube. But he had to get a rib removed on the back near his collarbone to alleviate some of the blood vessel pressure there so he wouldn't have the issues with blood clotting anymore. And you're right, he gave it to his mom. And shout out to his mother, Lisa Hartman, for being a real one here, because she not only has been holding on to this rib, but apparently went and procured a special type of peroxide that's about 20% or 30% stronger than what can be bought in a store, and had the rib soaked in that for 24 hours multiple times so that it wouldn't rot. And it's also to get rid of the flesh that was on the rib. That's a real one. There are a lot of moms out there, and shout out to my own mom, who love their kids, who would go above and beyond for them. I'm not sure we have many Lisa Hartmans out there who would be willing to go and risk potentially, like Sam said, ending up on an FBI watch list for going and buying the chemicals that you saw on Dexter when he's melting people in the basement of his kill rooms. She went out and did that for her son so he could have the most cool, unique piece of jewelry possible. Shout out to Lisa. That's the kind of mom I want over here on the Notre Dame side. We are happy to have her aboard the ship.
There are two important follow-up questions that I've yet to see an answer to. Number one, what happens to the rest of the rib? Because a shark tooth size rib that's not going to take the whole rib. Like, is the rest of the rib just being thrown out, all this preservation just for a little portion of the rib, or do they keep the rest of the rib for something else? Number two, and this is where I really want to be a fly on the wall. I just want to be in the room when she brings it in to whoever does this magical jewelry making and says, I've got this rib and I need this human rib turned in to a piece of jewelry. Like, it just feels like that's the sort of thing that gets a call. Like, the local authorities have to be called at some point. Like, there has to be a call ahead of, like, hey, I'm taking my kid's rib in. I don't want this to become an issue. Like, I just want you guys to be aware. There's so many weird follow-up questions to that process to me that I wish we could get some sort of a documentary made of the making of the jewelry piece, not so I can see what the final product looks like, but just to see the look on every person's face along the way that's asked to make the jewelry out of this rib.
Well, and the other, so you're right, delicate protocol around rib business. I think we can all establish that, right? This isn't your baby back ribs. This isn't the stuff that we're used to. This is a very different kind of rib business. So we've got to approach this with care. The other part that's difficult about this, and it's why I made such a point to preface this with, this was done because of a health issue, is Fitz, as you know, people of a certain age hear rib removal, and your mind only really goes to one thing. I'm not going to say what that thing is, but if you know, you know. And so obviously going into a place with a rib that's been removed, you're going to have most people, I would say, under a certain age thinking the same thing. And we don't want them thinking that thing because that thing's not true about the person they're thinking the thing about.
Wait, it's not true. Oh, well, see, now we learned that it's not true. Here's the thing too. If you are of a certain age and you hear rib removal, you just giggle. I don't care how professional you want to be, you just giggle. Like the entire process here is a little like we're walking a very thin line, Mike, and it's just a giggly. That's all I'm gonna say. It's just a giggly line, and for sure, she's also got to clarify. No, it was taken out for medical reasons. Like every time she brings that somewhere, she's gonna have to say, "This is my son's rib, removed for medical reasons." In a very normal procedure that then I then had a chemical remove the flesh from, and I would now like it turned into shark soup. But you have to, as a Notre Dame fan, you got to feel good, right? Like, because there's a certain swagger you want from your quarterback. Getting your rib removed and turning it into jewelry is the exact sort of quarterback swagger I need. I want that from my favorite team's quarterback.
I knew he was a great player. I did not realize he was this metal, and that is 100%, you're absolutely right, why I am so excited. A dog is in the house right now, and he is ready to lead that team to victory.